So the festive fixtures are over, and I have to say it is one to forget if you're a Manchester United fan, or probably even a Manchester City fan. Although improvement, you drew, and you're not lost. And in today's video, we're going to break down what we've learned this week in the Premier League. We're going to start with Ipswich, Arsenal, what we learned from the game, then Chelsea, Fulham, what we learned from the game, and then Forest, Tottenham, a little bit of what we learned from the game, because I didn't do individual match reactions for those games, because to be honest, they weren't the most exciting, and I had to make a Man United reaction at the same time and stuff, so I didn't have time. And then we're going to talk about Liverpool. Will anyone catch Liverpool? Have Liverpool been the best team in the league? We'll talk about their dominance, why they might be dominant. Could Arsenal catch them? Could Chelsea catch them? We'll talk a little bit about Newcastle, Villa, that game, and then at the end, we'll talk about the Manchester club. So we're going to talk about what we've learned from game week 18 in the Premier League, guys. So I hope you enjoy this video. It's broken down in this order, so if you want to skip to a specific bit, I think it sort of makes it easier for you to maybe find it. But we're going to talk about the Arsenal game, because Arsenal were the better team. They deserved to beat Ipswich. Ipswich did absolutely nothing going forward, and Arsenal defence was solid as always. And I was going to make a match reaction on this last night, but I was exhausted. And the Arsenal game, I'm not going to lie, your second half sent me to sleep a little bit. It was boring. You've done all right. You've done the job. You clearly missed Saka. Second half was a bit meh. And I thought, you know what? I'll just go into a bit more detail about this game compared to the other games in this review of what we've learned this weekend, and give you my thoughts on the Arsenal-Ipswich game to begin with, where Arsenal, I believe, are 12 games unbeaten. So there's sort of been a bit of a crisis at Arsenal. Oh no, and people are overreacting. But look, yes, Arsenal won't be happy that Liverpool are so far ahead of them, especially considering this is the year Man City have dropped off. So this is when Arsenal fans would want to capitalise and win that Premier League title. Slots only just come in. And I think that's why there's a bit of negativity around Arsenal, because Liverpool have just been a bit better. But you're not losing games. Yes, the goals aren't coming thick and fast in some games, but you're scoring goals and you're getting results for the most part. There's the Fulham game, of course, the Everton game, which are going to be frustrating draws for Arsenal that they'd probably hope to win. But I think Arsenal are in a good place. I just think they're going to need reinforcements in attack in January if they can, if not in the summer. They were the better team versus Ipswich, 1.94 XG, 3 chances to Ipswich's 0. You look at Ipswich's XG, Gabriel and Saliba. I don't even think they were trying, but they just locked Ipswich down. Timber put in a fantastic performance. Myles Lewis Skelly has been absolutely excellent. I thought Declan Rice had a good game. Havertz had a good game. Trossard had a good game. The big question mark from that game for me is around Martinelli. I think you might have to move him on. I think there's maybe, no one's going to live up to Saka and, Saka's absence. For me, only Salah is better than him on the wing in the Premier League. I mean, Anthony Gordon may be the best left winger, Saka the second best right winger, Salah the best right winger. And I look at someone like Anthony Gordon, I think, what he'd do for Arsenal, someone like Anthony Gordon, But Arsenal definitely need a winger, and then maybe a long-term striker as well, like a Cunha and an Anthony Gordon could make a massive difference. But I think Arsenal, for the most part, are in a good place. In 2024, they have the most wins, the most points, the most goals scored, the least goals conceded, the best goal difference. They would be top of the league for 2024. I just think, if I'm an Arsenal fan, I think the fact that Liverpool have looked so good, and this is the year that City have dropped off, I can understand the frustration. So this is sort of what I took away from Arsenal's 1-0 win versus Ipswich. They need a forward and they need additional attacking investment. I think in terms of possession, tempo and pressing, I think everything was there. They controlled the game well. They never looked like they were going to lose the game. But I think if they didn't score, it could have been one of those frustrating games where they needed to find a breakthrough. I think Ipswich made it hard. And I do think when Saka's contributed 30% of Arsenal's GA this season, you could see where he could be missed for that extra bit of creativity, the movement, the everything as well. I thought Lewis Skelly was absolutely fantastic. He's keeping Zinchenko, Calafiore and Tierney out of the team at the moment with how good he has been. He is basically Timber, but on the left-hand side. So good on the ball, so good at breaking the lines. Fantastic player there. I thought Rice performed well, and I thought Marino looked quite good when he came on. There's been a bit of criticism of Marino lately, but I think he's had cameos and been good. I just think he needs a run of games to get in sort of the swing of it. I can't explain it. Maybe that's just me. Gabriel and Saliba solid as always, and I think because they have Gabriel and Saliba at the back, and even Timber and Lewis Skelly, they're so comfortable in build up. They're so comfortable playing out from the back. They've got the control there. They can control the ball. They control the possession. It's just, for Arsenal, their back line is so good. Their midfield is pretty solid. I think left centre mid's the only one with a big question mark around it. I thought Havertz was unbelievable yesterday and adapted to so many different roles. It's just about the front line. That's the only question marks around Arsenal. I think you look at Salah. this season, and you look at sort of Diaz and Gakpo and how they're performing, and Jota's a little bit like Trossard in his clutch, and Liverpool just have that extra bit quality in the front line. But they got the job done. I think it was difficult for them to create chances, but they got the job done. They won the game, the 3 points. All they can do is keep getting 3 points, because I think Liverpool will drop points here and there. Definitely, maybe fatigue as well. They just need to keep doing that. Odegaard, I thought, grew into the second half. Martinelli just doesn't seem to be offering enough. I think Arsenal are going to have to look at potentially replacing him. And I don't like to say that because Martinelli was so good in the 22-23 season, but he's not really kicked on since. And I think, yes, of course, some of it comes down to environments and player mechanisms and players around them. But I think if Arsenal want to win the league, they need to do better there. Trossard, I thought, had a good game, really good movement, really good crosses, especially for the Havertz goal. And Havertz now has 12 goals this season. I think he's performed quite well in midfield, actually, in that game. I think when you're going to dominate possession, I think you can have Havertz in midfield if you're playing one of the bottom teams. But I think if you're playing one of the top teams, Havertz needs to be the striker. But he was heavily involved in midfield, and I thought tactically his movement, he was interchanging between positions. It made him unpredictable, which led to Arsenal getting the goal. And I think the goal was key. My man of the match, probably Havertz, but I want to give Lewis Skelly a big shout out because 9 duels won, 3 tackles, 3 fouls, 3 final third entries, 2 take-ons completed, 2 chances created, and 2 clearances. That was some performance. He's played now 5 games in the Premier League this season as well. 3 key passes, 3 out of 4 successful dribbles, 8 tackles. He put in a very sound performance defensively, did not look out of place positioning, very sound performance defensively, showed Zinchenko levels because Zinchenko's quite good on the ball and inverting and coming into midfield, but he doesn't have that defensive stability. And I thought Lewis Skelly dealt well defensively. I thought he showed the defensive ability. He showed that he was very mature and maybe more aware than Zinchenko positionally as well. He was very comfortable inverting into midfield, didn't need to think twice about it. I know he did play as a midfielder in the academy, but it's like Tim, the way he can break the lines, the way he can resist the press, receive the ball at many angles, and progress the ball is fantastic. He's so natural on the ball, and I think his movement is very intelligent. He's not natural someone that's going to bomb down the win and carry the ball, but I thought he did a very, very good job. So I wanted to give a shout out to Lewis Skelly. That's been impressive. I now want to talk about Chelsea, who lost 2-1 to Fulham. Now, this was the game. First 20 minutes, I thought Chelsea looked quite good. Palmer scored within 16 minutes. I thought it was going to be 2-3-0 Chelsea. Easy game for them. But I felt Chelsea stepped their foot off the gas after sort of going 1-0 up. And what a goal that was from Cole Palmer. And 3 big chances for both sides. Maybe Chelsea could be more clinical, but I actually think that Fulham probably deserved to win the game. Obviously, was watching 3 games at once at this point for this game. But this is what I picked out, what I saw. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to be critical of Maresca because I think he's done a fantastic job at Chelsea. But I will say this, he could have made subs earlier. And I thought he could have made subs earlier versus Everton as well. Maybe that's because he doesn't trust his bench. Now there's 1 or 2 players out. He doesn't fully trust the players on his bench. And you've got Gui and Tyreek George, they're very young. And do you want to throw them into that kind of game? I think Madueke was a miss, but apparently he was dropped for disciplinary issues. Correct me if I'm wrong on that though. I personally would have taken Sancho off and brought on Felix. I thought Sancho looked a bit like Man United Sancho. He just wasn't taking on his man and stuff. And this is the thing with Sancho. There's a good player there, but sometimes he won't take on his man or he'll take the safe option. It's just like drive at someone, shoot. He can play too safe, and I think that's what he was today. This is 2 games in a row where Chelsea had dropped points, and this is probably their worst result of the season after what was so high. I think you were at a point where you have 3 points within Liverpool. But look, Chelsea were never really in the title race. It's just they were winning games, and it was like, oh, maybe they could do something here. But their expectation has always been top 4, and I think they're going to lose games and they're going to drop points, and it's more just about how they respond to that. I think they were just going to lose a game eventually. But Fulham really impressed me, actually. They really, really did impress me. They are a good side. They're very well organised, very well drilled, and they made it difficult for Chelsea. I mean, Cole Palmer was standout. His goal was excellent. But second half, Chelsea were abysmal. The last 30 minutes, when Cuckoo comes on, nothing happens. Chelsea were playing well for 20 minutes, creating chances. They scored. And then just completely, I don't know, got too relaxed because the second half they were poor. Gusto probably didn't have his best game. I think Jackson's dropped off a bit slightly in the last few games. I think in terms of movement and being a ball-playing striker, he's one of the best in the league. But I think his first touch was just a little bit off today. And I think in a game like Fulham, you need to get that right because they're quite, that second half, they were very compact. They were very shut down shop. And Chelsea, who've probably been the best team in the league in terms of finding space in the opposition's defensive lines, did struggle. Sancho wasn't taking risks. I would have subbed him off earlier. Chelsea probably could have gone for a second goal in the first half had they really pushed for it. And I think it could have been a different second half if they'd gone for that. But I think Fulham just came out in the second half very compact out of possession. And Chelsea just didn't really do much the last half an hour. I thought Neto works hard. I thought he gave Robinson a difficult game. And I think Maresca needs to trust the bench more, but maybe he doesn't. And maybe when we talk about Chelsea's depth and how good it is, maybe it's not quite as good as we think, because you've got to think how many players did Maresca trust. I'd have brought Felix on, and I read something, and I don't know if it's reliable. It might be a load of rubbish, because every time your team loses, the media will put a load of rubbish out that Maresca didn't want João Felix, and that was the only signing he didn't approve of, but the club forced him to get João Felix. I don't know what the situation is on that. Let me know down below. But I think I would have played Felix. But we've got to talk about Cole Palmer. What a 2024 it's been for Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer probably had his worst game in a Chelsea shirt last week versus Everton. And there was a couple, and it was only a very small percentage. There was 1 or 2 Chelsea fans being critical of him. There was 1 or 2 rival fans being critical of him. And I'm thinking, this guy has arguably been the best player in the Premier League in 2024. You could argue Salah, but Salah, beginning of 2024, wasn't at his best, while Cole Palmer was carrying Chelsea. And people were giving him stick last week. I thought, yeah, you could say Cole Palmer had a bad game, but people were giving him stick last week. It was crazy. And the goal he scored today was, not today, on Boxing Day, was phenomenal. And no player got more goal contributions in 2024 than Cole Palmer. And he now managed more goal contributions than Erling Haaland managed in 2023, which is absolutely insane. Now let's talk about Tottenham. Now, Nottingham Forest, I thought we're going to give Tottenham a difficult game in terms of compactness, in terms of taking points off, the biggest sides, they're taking points off Liverpool and Chelsea. They're going to frustrate you. And I thought Tottenham started all right. And I thought Tottenham had chances, and maybe Brennan Johnson could have done better. He was the most lively, but maybe he could have done more. But Forest made it difficult. Now Tottenham are slipping down the table. The pressure's starting to come on Ange. It's not good for them. I don't think Ange is the problem. As a Man United fan, we've sacked an Og. Are we better? No. The problem, I don't think a manager comes in and gets Tottenham play better. And maybe should change things up more. Maybe should, not be so attacking minded in some games when he's missing half his back line. But when he's having to play Basuma and Archie Gray at centre back and doesn't have any centre backs, doesn't have his first choice goalkeeper. Fullback's been running to the ground. The doggy's fallen off a cliff this season. Son probably is getting to that point where he can only play once a week. Brennan Johnson is good, but he's hit and miss. Werner, you can't rely on him. Solanke does really good, but he's in the graveyard shift. Do you know what I mean? Kulusevski, fantastic, but he's played nearly every minute of every game. He needs a rest. They're burnt to the ground. I feel for Ange. Because I don't think a new manager comes in and makes Tottenham better. I'll tell you that as a Man United fan. You look at the side that he's putting out. But it was a disappointing performance from Tottenham, because they just didn't really do anything going forward. They didn't really create anything versus Nottingham Forest. Forest had the 3rd lowest XG this season, despite being the 3rd lowest XG against this season. So they're very defensively strong. And they frustrated Tottenham today. And I think Tottenham really struggled to create, despite actually having their main attackers and main midfielders playing. And I think that's where Tottenham fans will be disappointed. I think Bentancur was the most disappointing for me. I thought him coming back, giving a bit of legs and energy in the midfield was going to make a difference. But the midfield was poor. They got run through. I think Bentancur struggled, who's been quite good this season before the ban. And maybe he's rusty, but it was quite easy for Gibbs White. I look at Tottenham, they need a long-term Son replacement. I don't think Son had his best game. He struggled against Aina. I think Son's one of those, if you play him once a week, he's all right. But when you play him twice a week, you can see it in his legs. Archie Gray, fantastic again. He performed unbelievably well at centre-back. I think he's done a really good job. 18 years of age, thrown out of position in centre-back. Teammates aren't performing, and he puts in that kind of performance. Solanke, I think, didn't put a foot wrong, was living off scraps in the graveyard shift. And Johnson was probably the most lively, but maybe needs to be a bit more clinical. But it is just hard to judge Ange when he's got that many players out. And I can understand criticism of Ange, but I don't think Zach and Ange Tottenham are going to get better. I think Ange needs a centre-back in January. I think Ange needs another big winger. More Odegaard to come back in is going to make a big difference. You've got to remember that Solanke was the only signing you made that wasn't a teenager in the summer. And you fell off a cliff the back end of last season. You thought, we'll go into next season only signing one player that's guaranteed to get in the starting 11. Tottenham are building for the future. And it's very much short-term pain for long-term gain. I think with Tottenham Hotspur where they are. But they were weak in duels. They did look leggy. But I look at this here, and I don't know what the reliability is in this. But Archie Gray's performance as centre-back have these pressure for Tottenham to sign a defender. But with Romero, Van der Ven, Davies and Dragusin out, I know that some of them are coming back very soon. Surely Tottenham need a centre-back. Centre-back and winger is the 2 positions I look at. I think that is what Tottenham need. A centre-back and a winger. And ideally, a left centre-back that could play left-back, like Hato. Hato could play left-back, give the doggy some proper competition. But then if there is injuries, he can go in at left centre-back. If you go out and get Yoro Hato, I think that's what you need to do in January. Now, anyway, let's talk about Liverpool. Let's talk about, can anyone catch Liverpool, the Premier League? Because they're 6 points clear of a game in hand and they also have the best goal difference. I think Arsenal, the Saka injury is a blow, but I think Arsenal, you can never rule them out. Chelsea aren't expected to be in a title race, but have looked good this season. I don't think Forest will catch them despite being on 34 points and having a fantastic season. Newcastle on a roll. Newcastle on a roll. I think Newcastle will get Europe for sure. Bournemouth look good. City dropping off. Fulham, yeah. I don't see anyone catching Liverpool, sadly. I think Arsenal have the biggest chance of it because Arsenal have a very strong defensive foundation. And you know the saying, attack wins you games, defence wins you titles. Arsenal very defensively solid, but it depends with Arsenal on attack and what they do and if they do anything in January. I think the only way Liverpool drop off is if they get what they got last season about March time, where the fatigue sets in and they massively fall off a cliff. That does happen. I think the only weakness around Liverpool is maybe left back and maybe just potentially fatigue. If they get an injury to Gravenberch or Van Dijk or Salah, that could be heavily impactful. I think they've had a bit more. I wouldn't say they've had more luck with injuries. They've lost Alisson, they've lost Konate, they lost Trent. They've lost big players, but I think if it's a Salah or a Gravenberch or a Van Dijk, I think that would be particularly impactful, whereas Arsenal have lost Saka and Odegaard, and Saka won't be back till February maybe. So it's interesting to see, but sadly, I think Liverpool are going to win the league because Liverpool just look sort of untouchable at the moment. They're top of the Champions League and the Premier League, just one loss all season. The midfield, Gravenberch, Jones, Alexis Szoboszlai, whoever's come into that has been absolutely fantastic. The way that Gravenberch has adapted to the sixth role has been fantastic. Salah, arguably the best player in the league this season, but then on the other side, on the left, there's Gakpo and Diaz that are really healthy. Shota always does a good job in the middle. Diaz has done well in the middle when played there. You know, and what Slot has done is he's just adapted his tactics so well. Liverpool can have a poor first half versus Leicester, a poor first half versus Ipswich, but in the second half, they come out a different side. Villa, Brighton, he adapts his tactics depending on the games. He changed to like a 4-2-2 diamond against United and Tottenham, and the press caused United problems and Tottenham problems when he beat Tottenham 6-3 and United 3-0. And the way that Slot has inherited Klopp's side, and yes, they play a similar style, similar principles, but set them up to get the best out of his players. And he knows Gravenberch and he knows Gakpo, two players that were okay last season under Klopp, but definitely have gone up levels under Slot, where he's understood the players, the profiles, and how to get the best out of them. And he's done so well at that. You know, the only weak spots I look at is potentially Darwin Núñez. Obviously, Jota can come in there. And then potentially Robertson. I think just because Robertson's sort of fallen off a little bit, that is probably the only weak spot. But when they have players like Endo, Bradley, Gomez, Kelleher that have had to come off the bench and do big jobs because of, you know, injuries to Konate and Trent and Endo and sort of just the cup games and you know, Kelleher to Alisson, you know, everybody stepped up. And I think Slot's done a fantastic job because he's got that team on side. The Liverpool players, their ability to take on his instructions and adapt and to respond. And it's so annoying because when Liverpool go 1-0 down, or even if they have a crap first half, I know that Liverpool are going to come out in the second half and win that game. Liverpool could be crap for 45 minutes, be 1-0 down, but you just know they're going to win 2-1, 3-1, or Salah's going to do something. And Salah, I think, is 12 games in a row with goal contributions in the league, which is ridiculous. Thank you for the FPL points. I think he's got 35 goal contributions in 24 games this season. He's like 33 years of age, and is he 32? And he's just not slowing down. He's been unbelievable this season. He's going for Ballon d'Or at this rate as well. And I think, you know, where Liverpool are at, unbeaten in the Champions League, only loss has been Forest. And at the time, there was a bit of outrage that they lost to Forest. And I remember there was reactionary people like, we've lost to Forest. Oh, we've, you know, and thought it was going to be a long season. But when you look where Forest are at, fourth in the league, that loss to Forest doesn't look too bad. I think maybe Liverpool just underestimated how good Forest were going to be this season, because I think we all did. But Gravenberch and Mo Salah have been unbelievable. Van Dijk's been unbelievable. Konate's been fantastic. You know, the midfield stepped up. Jones has done well. Harvey Elliott's going to come back in. Chiesa's going to come back in when they, you know, they could bring a lot more. Harvey Elliott's looked right in his cameos. I think, sadly, I don't like to say this, but Liverpool have been the best team in the league. They're the team that's really looked consistent, really looked good. And I don't even think they're at their best. I don't think Liverpool have got out of second gear. Liverpool are winning games. They look good. They look like the best team in the league. But I still think there's more to come from this side. And that does worry me as a United fan. Let's talk about Newcastle. Newcastle, I'm really worried because their next game is Man United, and we've lost the guy and we've lost Bruno. Not looking forward to that. Newcastle are now up to 5th in the league after 4-0 win versus Leicester, 3-1 win versus Brentford, 4-0 win versus Ipswich, and 3-0 versus Aston Villa. Tonali and Bruno have come into the midfield. Newcastle have clicked. The signings from last year, like Lewis Hall and Tonali, who weren't really used last year because of injuries and suspensions and age and a multitude of factors, which probably contributed to Newcastle's poor season last year, are coming in this season almost as if new signings, and they've been phenomenal. And Newcastle, Isaac Gordon is clicking, Murphy's getting goal contributions, but they're just clicking. Tonali being 6 has given Bruno Guimaraes more creativity to be an 8 and find space between the lines. And Newcastle with 14 goals in the last 4 games, 5th in the league. And the football they've played since the Liverpool 3-3 draw has been really, really good. It's like Eddie Howe's gone back to basics. He's changed a few things up. He's put his best players in their best positions. And they've played fantastic stuff. They started the season getting points but not looking good. Then they weren't getting points and not looking like scoring. And now they've just sort of clicked, and that confidence and momentum is with them. And they're in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. And I think Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, the midfield duo, has been phenomenal. Tonali is covering the ground. He's winning the duels. He's doing the work at possession. Bruno Guimaraes can now play in his best role 8, pick apart teams. Lewis Hall, arguably best left back in the league this season. He's been phenomenal. Isaac in his best scoring form. I think he's got 5 in his last 5 or something. I think he scored in 10 of his last 12 games. Anthony Gordon back to his best, I think he had a slower start to the season, but he's driving at players. But when you've got Gordon and Murphy, the 2 hardest working wingers in the league, the press, the work rate from Newcastle, they've got the hardest working team in the league when it comes to physical levels. I'm worried as a United fan because Man United's 2 most physical players in terms of ground coverage and fitness are Bruno Fernandes and Agate, who are now suspended for the Newcastle game. Newcastle, they're going to run Casemiro and Eriksen out of the park. Maynard will get run out of the park because he's a technical player, not a physical player. I'm very worried for the Newcastle game. They've looked very, very good. Even Shaw's very solid player. I think they definitely need a long-term centre-back and a long-term right winger. But they've looked phenomenal this season. Isaac, Bruno Guimaraes, Anthony Gordon, Tonali, Lewis Hall, the 5 names that big clubs will be looking at. They've got some squad, and I think Eddie Howe's done well to respond. And then my team, Man United, where to begin? The Manchester Derby win felt so good. I thought, we could be on the up. But then 4-3 lost to Tottenham. And I don't think we deserved to lose that game, to be fair. 3-0 lost to Bournemouth, horrific. Worst game under Amorim, I thought. 2-0 lost to Wolves, horrific. The ref did nothing to help us versus Wolves. The ref was a disgrace. But we didn't deserve anything out of that Wolves game. And United need a left wing back. There's nothing on our left-hand side. We need to go and invest in January because the left-hand side, I think wing-backs are so crucial to Amorim's system. And when the wing-backs can't carry the ball forward, we're wondering why we can't score. We're wondering why the attack is starved because Ahmad's our best 10, but he's also our best wing back. And that's the problem we're having there. And when you've lost Bruno, we've lost the guy, and we're this bad, and we've got Newcastle and Liverpool, who over the last 5 games are the most informed teams in the league. And we didn't do well against Newcastle last season. I am worried. Newcastle, Liverpool, then Arsenal in the FA Cup, but I don't know how serious Arsenal take the FA Cup. And then we've got Southampton, where Southampton could be a 6-pointer if we don't get results in our next 2 games. Now, a lot of people are saying, do you think United will get relegated, Alice? Do you think United will get relegated? No. I think we're too good to get relegated, although when I said that, people said that's what they said in the 70s. I don't think we will. I'm not worried about that. We're still 8 points clear of the drop. But I do worry our next 2 games, we're not going to win those, and it's going to put a bit of pressure on. And it's not on Amorim. There's people turning on Amorim already, which is ridiculous. It is on the players. It's on the players not being good enough. It's on not having the wing backs, and this is why I have a bit of leniency with Ange. I don't think the squad is that good. I feel for Amorim. He's got a very, very difficult job, Ruben Amorim, to do, and he's not at fault at all. The players aren't particularly good. The attack wastes chances. We could have beat Forest and we could have beat Tottenham. We actually created 3 times the XG of Nottingham Forest or double the XG of Nottingham Forest. We are just not creating. We are making defensive mistakes, and the wing backs can't do what Amorim wants the system to do. And Amorim wants to implement a system, see who can do it, see who can't do it. So next season will be better for it. And I just look at United and I think if you give Amorim the wing backs he needs, and the players can stop making silly mistakes, and the attack can stop missing chances, I think it will balance out. And I think United, it's going to be a rough season. The season is essentially over for us. It's going to be a rough, long season, but I think next season with a good window, we can bounce back. As of Manchester City, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with City, because we're going to hear about those charges soon. Let me know your thoughts down below. I hope you liked my roundup over the festive sort of period of the big sides. I hope you enjoyed the roundup. Thank you for watching, guys. Bye.